All right, let's play a little game, Bernie, and move on and give people some fantasy advice because the trading deadline is Sunday, and I want to go through some of the big names that are on the trading block, which allows us to give the latest news on that, which allows you to give your opinion and your expertise about if these guys end up with these teams, what the fantasy impact might be. Carlos Beltran, of course, has been the biggest name. The latest stories are that the two World Series teams last year, that he's going to end up with one of them, the Giants or the Rangers. Let's start in the National League. If he ends up with the Giants, what's the fantasy impact on the Giants and on Beltran? Is this the best place for him to go?
It is absolutely the best place for him and the best place for the Mets. Get him out of the East Coast so that he does not come back and haunt you every day on replays and newspaper articles. It's 4 hours away. They don't watch the same games. It's a different game on the West Coast than the East Coast. Get them out of your area codes. Send them to the West Coast. Send them to the National League. That's okay, but not in your division. Beltran turns the Giants around. What do they need, Butch? What's the one thing they need?
Well, they need some pop. They need a bat in the middle of the lineup that not only can hit some home runs and drive the ball, but makes pitchers think.
There it is.
Well, then, but Bernie, here's the real question. While we all remember, those of us old enough to, what Carlos Beltran did for the Houston Astros in 2004, and by the way, if people don't remember, he played 90-some-odd games with them. He hit 23 home runs. You look at the average, and it wasn't great. He led them to the playoffs. He hit 4 home runs against the Cardinals. Not the Cardinals, against the Braves to win a playoff series. He hit 4 home runs in a 7-game series. He almost led them to the World Series. Now, he was 27, so the real question from a fantasy and reality impact today is, what does he have left at 34 years old? Can he be that same type of player for the Giants or the Rangers?
Hey, Butch, he had a year off. He's a year younger in his physicality. I like him. I think he is a real gap hitter. He's, he'll hit that right field porch. He'll hit some balls into the water there, and I'll even tell you who I would give up for him if I were them.
Okay.
They have a second baseman named Charlie Culberson, who is a good hit, no field second baseman. The Mets desperately need a second baseman. Charlie goes in the deal for me. Thomas Neal is an outfielder. He's an outstanding hitter. He goes in the deal for me, and they're going to want pitching, and that's where the stumbling block is going to be. And here's my deal. If I can sign Beltran to an extension, you can have one of two pitchers. You can have Bumgarner because I've got Wheeler coming up, or you might even get Sanchez, but he has got to sign an extension of at least 2 years. That's the only way I give up a starting pitcher, and in no way do I give up Zach Wheeler.
I'll disagree with you a little bit, Bernie. If I were the Giants, I would take the chance without making the deal contingent, only because, correct me if I'm wrong, if Beltran walks, you're going to get a couple of compensatory picks, aren't you?
Yeah, you are, but they're not going to be Major League ready. And I've got to sustain this momentum I have. The window is not big.
All right.
It's only open for a couple of years. They've got an infrastructure now to do it. Mets are not going to take, and the other guy that I would float at them, very possibly, and I'm blocking on his name, the right field.
For San Francisco?
Yeah, the guy I really love.
Oh, Scherholtz?
Yeah, Nate Scherholtz.
Right.
I might float that name at him, but that's where I go. I take him to the Giants, and I take a package back to the Mets of guys that are not going to come back and haunt me.
One other thing about Beltran before we move on to other guys. If he does go to Texas, because those are the latest stories, even though he said he doesn't want to DH, even though he said he doesn't want to play center field, but he might make an exception for the final months of the season, from a fantasy impact, couldn't you make the argument that in that lineup, in that ballpark, even though he's changing leagues, going to get his new pitchers again, that he could have a huge impact fantasy-wise if he goes to Texas?
Butch, they don't need him. They don't need Carlos Beltran. They have enough offense now. They need pitching. I don't think they're going to be big in on Beltran. I may be wrong. We may be looking at this on Monday and saying Bernie's nuts, but Texas needs pitching. They're not going to look at a Carlos Beltran. They're scoring runs every single day, Butch. They're just not stopping people consistently from scoring. So I don't think that's where they put their money and their prospects. I think they put it in pitching. I definitely see Beltran. If he goes anywhere, which he will, I think it's to the National League.